What's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Be More. I'm really excited because I don't always have guests on Be More, but today I do have a guest, and I'm super excited to bring her on, and we'll talk to her in just a moment.
Close the doors, walk across the corridor. We got something to show you. Media is our repertoire.
Okay, welcome back. As I mentioned, I have a super special guest today, and I am very excited. I hope you are too. I'd like to introduce to you DeShawn. Anna!
I love everything about this intro. What's going on, Dr. Tachi?
Not much. How are you?
I'm wonderful. I'm feeling good today. How about you?
It is what it is, but I'm good, right? That's what people want to hear. So that's what I'm going to say.
It makes everybody feel great, okay? But I am really good today.
They don't care about what's going on. So I'm just going to say I feel good. But no, really, thank you for asking. I'm excellent. What I'd love for you to do is introduce yourself to the audience, who you are and what you do.
Sure. I'm Anna DeShawn, your favorite queer radio personality, social entrepreneur from the South Side of Chicago, storyteller and community organizer. I build media platforms that stream and celebrate BIPOC and QTPOC stories. And I just believe in telling the stories that deserve to be heard. So that's really at the heart of why I do what I do.
Fantastic. So when we talk about the stories that need to be told, what exactly are you talking about? What stories?
Stories that I care so much about. Black stories, Black queer stories, Black queer women's stories. Child, we hit the trifecta. I'm all in. Okay. These are the stories and the communities that I love uplifting. And I love bringing my comrades and my allies along as well. So there's so many stories that deserve to be heard that don't make a blog, that don't make the news, you know what I mean, at 10 o'clock, but they deserve to be heard. And so those are the stories I like to center.
That's wonderful to hear because they need to be centered and they need to be heard. And who better than you, the great Anna DeShawn, than to do that? So you mentioned that you have two platforms, the Qube, which is a podcast network, right? And then you have E3 Radio, which is that still like a podcast network or is that live radio? Explain a little bit.
Sure. So the journey for me started in November of 2009 with E3 Radio. It's been an online radio station playing queer music since that time and doing interviews and centering queer stories. And people can tune in at e3radio.fm, where we are literally live streaming queer music all day long, every genre, but some of the best queer music you can't find anywhere else. And we also house the Queer News podcast that I host and drop a new episode every Monday. We consider ourselves Queer News done right, okay? And then for the podcasting work, that is where the Qube comes in. I just had a problem finding the best Black podcasts I wanted to listen to. And where are the brown podcasts from my comrades? And I want to listen to their stuff too. And there hasn't been a place for that in the podcasting space. And so I decided to build it. And so that's what we're doing over at the Qube. We've curated 60 podcasts today that you can go and find inside of our platform, looking to build a mobile application. And in the meantime, we're creating our own Qube original content, telling the stories at the intersections of race and sexuality. And all the work gets me excited, and it all just comes back to the idea that I'm passionate about telling Black and brown and queer stories.
Do you think that this is a great time for that to happen? Meaning, other than any other time in history, is now the time for independent platforms to come about and tell people's stories?
I think it's past time. I think we've been in it. I believe there was a moment where the internet and media collided, and it just continues to evolve as technology continues to evolve. And so, yeah, I mean, I think this is that era. This is that time where independence can continue to thrive, where you can build your own following, build your own fans, right? And folks that will help to sustain and support your work. I think it's a matter of how you define success. And what success means for you, because that is different for absolutely everybody else. And so I feel like in today's environment, the way these platforms are set up and how you can monetize on them, once you get your strategy, find your voice and find your people, you can absolutely be successful out here as an independent creator.
Absolutely. And, I think success, people put success in the same basket as I've made it in Hollywood. And that's not always the case, right? And if you think about it, those of us that are independent creators and have independent platforms, let's be real about the likelihood of us actually making it to their quote standards. Most of us will not, because that industry works with who they know and who they want to work with, and it's generally not us. So I 100% agree. If not us, then who? I mean, that's been said over and over, but you know,
It's still true.
still true. Still true.
Very true. Mm-hmm.
So the reason I brought you on is not just because you're a wonderful human being, but there was, and not just because you have these two fantastic, very needed platforms, but also because recently you had the chance to be in a room that was in the news and the talk of news media for the past few days. Tell us about your time at NABJ.
Yeah, first I want to give a big thank you to the Ford Foundation for sponsoring my complimentary ticket, to NABJ.
Okay.
You know, historically Black media and organizations in general have not been places I have spent lots of time, because they aren't necessarily historically queer friendly places or queer affirming places. And child, especially when I was young, I just didn't have the energy to negotiate those spaces with who I am. But there was this opportunity that came up. I'd been encouraged by other colleagues to be at NABJ and to give it a chance. And I'm glad I went, despite the moment that hit the news. That was way too newsworthy. I had a wonderful time connecting with other Black journalists from around the country. I had an excellent time connecting with other Black queer journalists. We had a meetup, and there had to be 100 people in the room, if not more. It was the largest meetup they've ever had. I'm grateful to have been there, to have seen it. You know, these conventions are meant for relationship building, and I feel like I did that. And it was in my hometown of Chicago, so how could I miss it? And it was just, overall, it was a much needed time, and I'm really glad I went.
Great. And so, of course, we know that NABJ has been having was this the 22nd? Wait a minute. What year was this for NABJ?
49.
49th. Yes. 22nd was another thing, film festival. This one was the 49th. So they've been doing it for 49 years. Yeah. And it's interesting because it is customary for the organization to invite political candidates who are running for office, particularly presidential candidates. And this year was no different. The interesting thing is that the candidate who was able to attend had been invited before, but did not attend before this year. You were in attendance when the former president was in the room to which he was invited. Tell us a little bit about what happened there.
Yeah, I mean, the whole experience was just kind of baffling. We got an email. It came really late in the night. And then I saw it Tuesday morning, and I had to read it 3 times. I didn't really believe it was real. Like, why is he here? I just like, this is odd. But that day, it was set to start at noon. They told us we could begin lining up at 10 a.m. We got in line, and those lines was long. People waited, okay? And there were a lot of people who didn't get in. There was not a single seat left in that grand ballroom at the Hilton Chicago. And when he came out, there were a few people cheering. You know, there's MAGA folks everywhere. They had their red hats on saying Trump and all the things. And for the most part, the room was quiet. It was a bunch of journalists with their phones out, reporting and capturing the moment. Was really what was happening. And it started off with Rachel Scott asking some hard-hitting questions, and then 45 was 45. The rest of the interview, it was really wild to be there in person. I never thought I'd be in a room with 45. This was not on my bucket list, Dr. Tachi.
I'm sure it wasn't. Did you feel that it was necessary for him to attend? Was that needed? Now, granted, again, setting the stage that they've invited political candidates before, it feels like this is something a bit different. Do you think that him being there cleared up any misconceptions, answered any questions, and was his presence necessary?
I don't think he won a single Black vote showing up at NABJ. I don't think he swayed anybody one way or the other. He comes in as himself, and anybody who walked in there or who booked him and thought he was going to, for some reason, quote unquote, humble himself or hear what those three Black women had to say or answer their questions directly or talk about any policies that matter to Black folks, I mean, they must be delusional. This is not who he is. You know, he is a business person running for political office, and he runs to run the country like he's run his businesses. And if that's any indication, we ought not go through this again, in my opinion. I think he accepted this opportunity because I feel like he's in a bad space right now with VP Kamala Harris coming in. And I think he thought it was an opportunity for him. I mean, he has said no year after year after year, from my understanding. So this year, I feel like he said yes because he needs some votes. He needs to touch on some people who are undecided, right? There are plenty of Black people who are still undecided, and he wants to reach them, but he didn't do that. He didn't do that by being up there and disrespecting those reporters, by questioning VP Kamala Harris's racial identity, her ethnicity. She turned Black. I mean, just some of the things were just so outlandish and ridiculous. There was no way that anybody who takes their vote seriously changed their perception or idea of him during that Q&A session.
Interesting. You talk about the disrespect that was shown. And again, this was live streamed. So many of us that were not in attendance were able to watch and make our own opinions of how effective the questioning was, his behavior, etc. Do you think, you said 45 was 45. Knowing that, do you think that the leadership made a good, NABJ leadership made a good decision in allowing him to present himself at the conference?
No, I don't think it was necessary at all. So I don't see 45 as a traditional Republican candidate. That's just not who he is, in my opinion. He is a divisive individual. His policies do not support Black humanity. You know, and one of the questions that came up on my YouTube was like, what policies don't support Black humanity? Anybody who wants cops to have immunity does not support Black folks' humanity. There's just no way that you can. And I think this idea that we need to do what we've always done because we've always done it is ridiculous. It doesn't serve anybody. Black respectability will not save us. It has not saved us yet. And doing what people think we should be doing, or using this objectivity that we as journalists are taught to exercise in our work, that's fine. But this is a convention. This is not a newsroom. This ain't everybody's beat for the day. It's a convention for Black journalists to commune with other Black journalists and to network and to celebrate each other and to support each other. Not to have to cover such a divisive human being whose policies, like I said, I don't feel like support Black folks' humanity, and definitely don't support queer folks' humanity. Matter of fact, he'll do the same thing he did before, which is basically erase us from every document. Right. There won't be a Pride Month in June. There won't be those types of celebrations. There won't be those types of opportunities because he does not support our identity, LGBTQ folks' identity for sure. And so, no, I don't think they should have extended the invitation. I don't think he's a traditional Republican candidate. And I also will say and recognize, and let's be very clear, I know Black conservatives, okay? There are so many Black conservatives. Most people we know are conservative, period. There are plenty of Black moderates and there are plenty of Black liberals. This is not about an ideology thing. It is about when someone is doing harm, right, to a whole group of people and continues to do harm. And that's what he does. Anybody who wants to pardon the insurrectionists on January 6th do not support Black folks' humanity, because he doesn't treat Black folks the same way. He just never has. And it's just so frustrating. No, I don't think they needed to invite him at all.
Yeah, I could see that you could go on a longer trajectory.
I'm so good, child. By Tachi, I'm just gonna stop talking. Okay.
You're like, let me just reel it back in, because there's so much more I could say. And definitely, I understand it. I talked to some other people. I was actually on a panel where we talked about this,
Mm.
and for myself also being a journalist, I think that there is a fine line, as you were mentioning, between being objective, using that objectivity that we're taught, and demanding that we be respected. Once you let go of the demand to be respected, anything goes. And it felt disheartening. And of course, I was not there. I'm not leadership there. I'm not even a member of NABJ. But it felt disheartening that you could be someplace that is supposed to be for the protection and upliftment of Black journalists, right? And journalism. And you don't feel protected. You feel like you were allowed to be disrespected. That's just some of what I've heard and what I've seen. Did you feel disrespected as a journalist?
I don't know if I felt disrespected, but I just felt like that it wasn't necessary. I just felt like it wasn't necessary. I just never felt like he was going to add anything different to the conversation. He wasn't going to bring anything different to this conversation, and he wasn't going to show up any differently. And he didn't. I mean, there was one part where he was speaking and he said, there's journalists in here I respect. And, this is mostly Black journalists. And we're sitting here laughing like this is the National Association of Black Journalists. Of course, everybody in here is Black, and even having the nerve to continue to say a Black job. What's a Black job? And, them questioning, what is that? He's like, oh, any job anybody has. What? I mean, there's just, he is a challenging human.
And I can imagine that it was challenging to be in the room because as a journalist, I'm sure it's very difficult to balance your thoughts and your opinions of who someone is and the facts of who someone is with being professional and not, getting upset in the moment. I'm sure that was difficult, maybe not for you, but for some other journalists, because we heard and and all it's difficult. It's difficult,
especially when you work for a major network. Right.
Yes.
So I have the freedom of being able to report for people who I want to report to. I am not in a position where I need to be so objective that I forget about my core target audience. Right. I'm speaking to queer folks and Black queer folks 95% of the time. Those are the people I'm speaking to, so I can say and do what I like and what I want. People who work for these major networks, there is a certain level of objectivity that they need to practice, which also we can go deeper into this, Dr. Tachi, which is just rooted in white supremacy, child, because sometimes there aren't two sides to the story. And that is what, as journalists, we're not always taught. But as children, we're taught very early there's a difference between right and wrong.
Right.
And that ought to apply in journalism as well. This is not something about the economy. Okay. There's a lot of objectivity on how you should approach that, right? We're not talking about homelessness. There's lots of ways you can address the unhoused and the housing instability in this country. There's lots of places and policies and things I think people care about, healthcare, that can be seen as objective. You can report on them objectively. But when it comes to people's humanity, when it comes to blatant racism, when it comes to blatant transphobia, when it comes to these things that deal with people's well-being, there are certain things that are not objective. There is literally a right and there is literally a wrong. Racism equals wrong. There aren't two sides to that story. There are not two sides. Okay. Homophobia equals wrong. There are not two sides. Transphobia equals wrong, right? There's nothing objective about any of these topics. We're talking about people's humanity and right to live their lives and be their full and authentic selves as we pay taxes, as we show up every day born in this country, as we show up. We deserve that. It's a right. And the policies that Republicans are looking to enact tear all of those down. And I think that that's where the line has to be drawn when we talk about journalism and objectivity. Sometimes it's just a right and a wrong.
Interesting. Interesting. So one last question, because you've been so kind to give me all of this time already. When we're looking at these types of things and we're making commentary, and you have the freedom on your platform to make this commentary, you actually did a whole video about your experience at NABJ and talked a little bit about your views on this. Very interesting. The individuals who came, I wanted to comment because I made my thoughts known, but so did a whole lot of other people, and some in not so constructive ways. Very interesting indeed. So tell me a little bit about that. And in addition, how would you suggest that the audience handle comments and comment themselves when it comes to videos on social media?
Chile, the trolls and the bots love my work. Okay. If I put Trump in a title, which I very rarely do. Actually, I think that might have been like one or the first or second time I've ever used his name in a title, because it just attracts the bots. You know, I feel like there's tons of his supporters that have his name right on Google Alert. And if there's a moment that they can jump in and do what they do, they will. And I've experienced it a lot in my work, a lot, whether it's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, child, they come all out the woodwork all the time. And so for me, I really have to protect my peace and just be comfortable with what I said. And that's a challenging thing. Every day I am challenged to be vulnerable out here. I am challenged to speak my truth. And I gauge my courage because I got Shirley Chisholm sitting right here next to me. I got Ella Baker over here. Okay. There are women and Black women who have had it way worse than I got it today. Ida B. Wells is over here, you know, and I get my courage from them. They spoke the truth in the face of all types of hate that was standing in front of them, not typing on a computer screen 60,000 miles from me. And so I get my courage from them. And I believe there is power in speaking your truth to power. And I'm going to keep doing it. And it makes me uncomfortable. It's taxing. And I also told my story to my people and they loved it. Right? Those are the people I'm telling my story for. If y'all find this story and you find something wrong with it and y'all just want to be bots and trolls, do your thing. Help my video to be boosted. Okay. We be needing comments to boost the video views. All right. I mean, and so I just allow it to fuel my end goals. In this particular case, my goal right now is to monetize that YouTube channel. And so they're helping me to do that as they sit there and watch my video. And so I have to spin it in a way that continues to serve me and continues to serve the work.
That's a good word. And we want to support you in continuing to do the work because you are doing good work. So thank you so much. How can people reach you?
Follow me at Anna DeShawn across any social media platform that you love. And then if you want to follow the radio station, it's E3 Radio. And if you want to follow the Qube, it's THEQUB app across all socials. Just get in, have fun with us. We're doing good work out here. So I appreciate it in advance.
And we appreciate you coming on and talking to the Be More audience. Hopefully, guys, this was really helpful for you in terms of learning how to be your best self and be more when creating video and live streams. Anna DeShawn, thank you so much. I will see you all next time. Cheers.
We always here for you.